I'm sure you're all aware of the subject matter today. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Kolpan, she is obviously one of our star physicians in the area, and I will say she went to Bucknell, which is a little off the track, but then she did her medical school at Robert Wood Johnson, which is very close and local, and then she went through the residency program at the medical center, which again, my late husband was a very integral part of that, and so that's always a special place in my heart for our family practice physicians. But she's gone another mile or 6 and getting into the integrated medicine things, and then obviously she is here to tell you all about it today and get you excited about the new things that are happening. And I can't tell you enough about how excited we are to have you all here and to listen to this lady, because she's got some incredible things to share with you. And rather than delay anything more, I will turn it over to Dr. Kolpan, and please enjoy.
Thank you so much. That takes care of most of my first slide. So I appreciate the introduction, that's great. So again, my name's Lori Kolpan. I'm gonna start with just a little bit about myself and my journey to integrative medicine. We'll talk a little about what exactly integrative medicine is. And then I thought talking about Healthspan versus lifespan would be a great topic for this afternoon's lunch. So again, lots of this was already said. In medical school, it used to be called UMDNJ, Robert Wood Johnson. This is hilarious because I worked on the Alumni Foundation. So originally it was Rutgers Medical School. And then it turned to UMDNJ, the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey. And I was one of the people to try to get everyone to call past students to get them to donate, and they'd say, "You changed the name. I went to Rutgers. It's no longer Rutgers. I'm not giving you money." Well, guess what? It's now Rutgers again. So that's kind of fun. I met my husband at medical school, and we both did our residency here at the medical center. Left the area for a little bit. I was stationed at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, but we always knew we would come back to Hunterdon because we love this community. I am a Hunterdon County native, went to Del Val High School. But we really love the medical system here and the community that exists at Hunterdon. So I was part of the teaching staff for 20 years. When I was training, integrative medicine was kind of just getting started. So what we had then was alternative medicine. And alternative medicine was like, instead of Western, you can do this. And it was a little too kooky for me. So I never really got involved with that, but I always had a very whole health approach to medical care. I felt that what we ate, how we slept, how we moved, how we stressed, all impacted our health greatly. And so in 2017, I went to my first integrative medicine conference, and it was like I had come home. You know, there were all of these physicians or other providers who had a strong background in Western medicine. They were not anti-Western medicine, it's the delivery system that is the problem. You know, I always talk about in family medicine, we're taught that we practice preventative care. And it wasn't until even recently that I realized I didn't practice preventative care in the way that I always wanted to. I practiced early detection. I'm gonna check your cholesterol and see if it's high. I'm gonna do your cancer screening and find cancer early. But in 15 minutes, you just don't have the time to really talk about ways to prevent getting chronic illnesses. So the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine had a fellowship that I really wanted to do. It was super expensive, and at the time I thought, I'm not doing that because I'm not going to spend my family's money. You don't get paid extra for doing integrative medicine, and in fact, most insurance companies don't even recognize integrative medicine. So I know, it's crazy. And then that great year of 2020 happened. Y'all remember that year? And all of the away rotations for this fellowship were now virtual. So it was still expensive, but it became much more affordable. My husband, so supportive, said, "You've always wanted to do this, go do this." And so I did. And I remember at the end, you had to do a away clerkship, shadowing. And I shadowed these two women at a place in California, and they saw their patients for an hour, each patient. Their patients did amazing. They were so smart. They practiced amazing medicine. They had all these other tools in their toolbox. And I thought, I remember talking to my husband, I'm like, I think I have to open an integrative medicine office, and I don't know what I'm doing. But with his support and lots of help, opened Your Whole Health in October of 2025, and I am so happy. It has been the best move ever. My patients are doing great. Like, it's just, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So a little bit about integrative specifically, like what is it? And again, it takes that whole person approach to healthcare. I love Hippocrates, our founder, our father of modern medicine, has so many quotes that really are integrative medicine, right? They really align with that. So this first quote, it's far more important to know what sort of person has a disease than to know what sort of disease a person has. This really exemplifies to me the difference between the approach in Western medicine and integrative medicine. So, as an example, we'll say Lynn, because I know Lynn, has diabetes. Let's say I've diagnosed her with diabetes. That Western medicine approach is, Lynn doesn't have diabetes. Lynn, you have diabetes. Here are the medicines we're going to use to treat you. Here's a referral to nutrition. I'll refer you to diabetic education so you can learn how to use a monitor. We'll follow up in 3 months, because I got 15 minutes to get through this. In an integrative approach, it's going to be, Lynn, looks like you have diabetes. Why do you have diabetes? What's your family history? What are you eating? How are you moving? Are you stressed to the max and have high cortisol? We're going to use lifestyle first to treat. And I don't have to refer to a nutritionist. I might, but I've got a whole hour for that appointment. So we're going to talk about what nutrition changes to make, what movement changes to make. And then we're going to talk about, here are some medicines that are an option. This is not bad diabetes. Here are some supplements that are an option, because now I've got more tools in my toolbox. And we're going to collaborate on a plan. So integrative medicine combines Western. I use Western medicines. Western medicine actually is amazing. The delivery system is the problem, but what we have to offer to treat cancer, the surgeries, treat trauma, I mean, it is amazing. So I'm not anti-Western at all, but there are other approaches. There's less medicine, right? And supplements that are very effective for thousands of years to treat many things. It's personalized. It's not, this is how I treat diabetes, this is how I treat Lynn, right? It's a high focus with lifestyle, and it is evidence-based. This is one of the things that gets my goat, is people are like, well, where's the evidence? There's tons of evidence, okay? Botanicals are not manufactured by billion-dollar companies like Eli Lilly, so you're not gonna find studies with 30,000 people enrolled, but it doesn't mean that there aren't many studies. In fact, I would say my colleagues in integrative medicine are more masterful about navigating evidence, because you have to be. You have different quality of studies, different powers of studies. You know, maybe they're small. You have to figure out what's good evidence and what's not. But there's lots of evidence. So, any questions about integrative medicine? All right. Let's talk about Healthspan versus Lifespan. First of all, who can tell me what is the difference between Healthspan and Lifespan?
Healthspan is health is like the lifespan of prolonged therapy that is keeping you alive for no reason.
Yeah, well, maybe not no reason, but so lifespan is the number of years that we live, right? That is a concrete definition. The lifespan is how long you live. Healthspan, there's no one accepted universal definition, but most would say it's the number of years that are lived in general good health. I like to say these are your you're living independently and vibrantly. You can do all the things that brought you joy, right? If you're functioning independently, and if what brought you joy was playing golf, maybe it's not the same game of golf as when you were in your 40s, but you're still playing golf. You're still going for walks with friends. You're still swimming. Whatever it was that brought you joy before, you're still able to do. Now, I've ever seen the definition of health span as without chronic disease. That is not what most studies look at or most people follow, which is good news, because in the US, we would be screwed, right? So, chronic conditions, this is new data from 2025. In the United States, 90% of all Medicare-aged population, so 65 and over, have a chronic condition. That's like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, a cancer, lung disease, heart disease, and 80% 2 or more, arthritis is in there, okay? So I certainly would say if you have well-controlled chronic conditions and you're still able to live independently and vibrantly, you're in your years of health span. You're still in good health. The problem is chronic diseases do increase the likelihood of poor health and disability. And the rates that we're seeing chronic disease increase are, dramatic. So this is looking at chronic disease prevalence in all of America, and all adults, 18 and above. So this is not just 65. And if you look in 1940, about 10% of patients had one chronic disease. In 2020, it's 60%. Dramatic. Now, we are living a lot longer in 2020 than we did in 1940, okay? So we do have a longer lifespan, more chance to get a chronic condition. But look at this last, I don't know if it shows well, the slope in just the last 2 decades, from 2000 to 2020, which, by the way, our life expectancy did not go up all that much during that time. It stopped rising in 2014. It actually went down a little bit and now is starting to come maybe up a little bit. That slope is actually even steeper in the last 2 decades. So it's something to definitely be concerned about, and it is all relates to lifestyle, okay? When we have more disease, the gap between health span and lifespan widens. So this health span lifespan gap, these are the years spent not in general good health. Maybe where you're not independent, or you're not able to do those things that bring you joy. This is data worldwide. So looking at all 183 countries in the World Health Organization from 2024, the health span lifespan gap is increasing. This is less than 2 decades. And we've added, the average gap was 8.5 years, now it's 9.7. This is worldwide. Now in the US, we like to be number 1, right? And unfortunately, this is another area where we're number 1. Our health span lifespan gap universally is 12.4 years. Worse for women than for men. There's a couple reasons for that. Women do live longer, but we also have more frailty. We have less muscle mass. And the less muscle mass you have, the more likely you are to lose that independence earlier. I'm going to talk a lot about muscle. It's big, okay? So what factors lead to accelerated aging? This is the big guy right here, systemic inflammation. And this has everything to do with our standard American lifestyle, okay? So systemic inflammation, actually in the field of longevity medicine, we call that inflammaging, because it affects every other factor on this slide that accelerates how fast you age. So it increases metabolic dysfunction. Metabolic dysfunction is associated with insulin resistance, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, okay? Loss of muscle mass and immune dysfunction, these are the two biggest reasons we lose our health span, okay? When you look at the blue zones, does anyone know what the blue zones are? Yeah, so this is where we have the greatest concentration of centenarians, people who live to 100. And if you look physiologically, what's different about them versus other areas? They have more muscle. And when you do testing of their immune system, the 100-year-olds have an immune system of a 70-year-old. Inflammation, so we all lose muscle as we age. 100% loss of hormones is the biggest factor. We really start to lose it starting in our 50s. If you're inflamed, that happens faster, and loss of immune function. We all know, right? You worry more about your immunity as you age. You worry about getting disease, getting infections. You have more immunizations that are available. You need higher doses of immunizations to even mount a response. That's worsened with inflammation. Mitochondrial dysfunction, I'm not going to go into this a lot other than to say it's sort of a buzzword. Our mitochondria are these organelles that are most concentrated. We have them all over our body, but you see them most in muscle and in brain. And they are the producers of ATP, or our energy within our body. As we age, we naturally have trouble recycling our mitochondria and making more of them. Tons and tons of supplements, a multi-billion-dollar industry focused on enhancing your mitochondrial function. Some of them are really amazing supplements. There are several that are not. And it's very hard when you're scrolling through your phone and seeing these ads that pop up for the younger you and fountain of youth to know which is which. That's where it is nice to know a provider who understands, supplements. And then genetics. And you may think, well, wait a minute, genetics, you said inflammation affects everything here, I'm born with my genes. You're born with your DNA, right? 100%, you're born with your DNA. And some of us have better juju than others. The expression of genes, though we have discovered, is very dependent on the environment. I'm going to give the Alzheimer's gene, the APOE4E allele, as an example. There's a lot of buzz around. Should I get tested for the APOE4E gene? Should I see, do I have the Alzheimer's gene? I have mixed opinions on that, right? Because just because you have the gene does not at all mean you're going to get the disease. How you live determines if that gene is turned on or off, right? So that is why systemic inflammation increases the risk of the diseases that are embedded in your DNA, but you have the ability to modulate that through lifestyle. Not 100, it's not 100%, but the latest statistic is 90% of all Alzheimer's is preventable. So sort of what can I do? That is, this was maybe a little depressing, but my whole point of this is there's so much you can do. There's so much. I have good news. I feel like my pastor on Sunday. I have good news for you today, but I do. I have good news. So there's emerging research in epigenetics. So epigenetics is turning on or off genes. Regenerative medicine and lifestyle medicine that suggests preventative measures, so true prevention, changing your lifestyle, can compress morbidity, which is disease, promote healthier aging trajectories, and ultimately increase health span. Many ways to extend your quality years. So what should we start with? We're going to start with nutrition. This is the big thing, okay? The standard American diet, the acronym is SAD, and that is not a mistake. So there you go. There's the standard American diet. It is full of foods that are highly processed, that are high in added sugar. I just did this cleanse where I needed to avoid sugar. I do this for a living. I still am astounded by how many foods have added sugar. Like my grass-fed, grass-finished meat stick. What the heck do you need sugar in there for? I had to find the sugar-free one. So lots of sugar added, high in saturated fats, And these foods have tons of calories. What are they missing? Nutrients. They don't feed your body what it wants. And to add insult to injury, first of all, am I shocking anyone here when I say that sugar's addicting? Or chips, or McDonald's hires scientists to make the most addictive French fry? Yeah. And to feed that addiction, we've supersized. Okay? And it grates every bone in my body to know that we've allowed this to happen in America. But we've supersized. So just look at those calories from 1960. I just want you to look at the sugar sweetened beverage, the soda. So the value soda value in 2011 has more calories than the entire meal in 1960. But all these extra calories, not a lot of nutrients, what's that going to lead to? Inflammation, and inflammation from a bigger America, right? So in 2011, the CDC started doing these obesity charts, because this is when we're starting to recognize the obesity epidemic. And what they were noticing was that obesity rates were really getting super high in our central area and the south. 30 to 35%, so 1 in 3 Americans were obese in 2011 in this area. Let's jump forward 2 years. We added a new color. In Mississippi and West Virginia, we're now 35 to 40% are obese. And we're seeing that orange spread. Let's jump ahead to 70. And that new color's really sort of taken off there. What happened to the green? There's only 3 of them left. 2019, we have another new color. So now, Mississippi's 40 to 45%, almost 1 in 2 people are obese. This sounds like a good time for a pandemic, where getting fresh food is like an episode of the Hunger Games. That's 2022. So it's just, I just think it's so impressive to see. And this is 2024. 2024 is the first time that we've stopped seeing an increase in the rates of obesity. And 2025, we don't have that map yet, but it may be just slightly less. Why? Ozempic, yeah. So the GLP-1s, 100%. Here is an example where medicine is not evil, right? Maybe I don't love the way that's always delivered, but for so many, this is life-changing, okay? This is going to change chronic disease rates. And the whole point of obesity is one of the biggest drivers to systemic inflammation. Now, sometimes our bodies need a little inflammation. So when we get an infection or an injury, we need our body to generate a fever to fight that infection or bring blood flow to that injury to heal it. Inflammation is a normal body response. But when we are getting all of these inflammatory foods, we get chronic inflammation, and that's a problem. Chronic inflammation inhibits acute inflammation. All of a sudden, you don't heal your wounds as well. You don't fight infections as well. Plus, it sets up for all these other chronic illnesses, heart disease, cancer. People have realized that colon cancer is spreading to our earlier population, that now we start screening at 45, and it's going to go down to 40, I'm certain. Why? Our colon is being fed all of those inflammatory foods and toxins we see all over the place. So, systemic inflammation, this is what we want to fight. How do we fight it? The anti-inflammatory diet. This is my absolutely favorite Hippocrates quote. Let food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food. Okay? So the anti-inflammatory diet, it can not only, truly prevent, it can prevent chronic illness. It can treat, and it should be, a first-line treatment of chronic illness. You can even reverse. I have taken people off their medications when we move to the anti-inflammatory diet. Tons of evidence, okay? The most widely studied versions, Mediterranean, DASH, and the vegetarian or vegan diets. This means the whole food vegetarian vegan. I've had plenty of the Oreo cookie and chip vegans. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? are foods, unlike the standard American diet, that are high in nutrients. They've got phytonutrients, antioxidants, monounsaturated fats, your omega-3 fats, and fiber. All of these things decrease inflammation, and they're delicious. There's so much I could go on about the anti-inflammatory diet, but basically you're looking for foods that look like they did when they were grown or killed. Okay, so not processed foods, higher on plants. Movement. Another wonderful quote from Hippocrates, and that is, walking is man's best medicine. We were not meant to sit like we do. So I'm just looking around the room. Most people are my age or maybe a little older. And so I know that you all remember the day when there was one screen, or maybe even 0 screens in your house, right? When you wanted to do something, you played outside, you gardened, you did things outside. If you actually wanted to watch that one screen that was only on a couple hours a day, and you wanted to watch something different, you had to get up and change the channel. You wanted to talk on the phone, you actually had to get up and answer the phone. If you wanted to talk to your family member that was down the hall, sometimes there was mom's intercom, Dada! But you got up and you went there. My husband and my children will text around the corner from each other. We sit. These screens are the necessary evil. They're a source of entertainment. They're how kids play. They're how kids interact. They are how we work. I sit so much more in this wonderful job that I have now. It's really sad. So we need to get moving. Recommendations from the CDC, 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular activity a week. And it doesn't matter how you get it. It can be 3 15-minute segments. It could be 5 30-minute segments. It could be 20 minutes every day, and you can even break that 20 minutes into 2 10-minute segments. All movement matters, okay? What I love is 5 years ago, they added plus 2 30-minute sessions of resistance training, because the evidence on the importance of muscle, which we'll talk about next, has really come to life. I do want to take a quick minute to talk about HIIT training, or high intensity interval training. So one of the things when we're talking about longevity, living our best, is improving what's called our VO2 max. This is basically our cardiorespiratory fitness. People who live well have a higher VO2 max. And one way to do this is HIIT training. You're going to alternate some high intensity intervals with low intensity intervals. And if you do this 1 day a week, that's all you need to do. There are so many different ways to do it. I put up just a very simple one here. So after a warm-up, 30-second bursts of high intensity. And high intensity is going to be individual for each person. Maybe high intensity is going to be high knees marching in place. Maybe it's going to be a jog. Jumping jacks. If you're doing a stationary bike, maybe you're going to crank it up for 30 seconds. You're going to be safe, but you're going to raise your heart as high as you can tolerate. Like the crazy people do burpees. I hate burpees, but that's a good one. And then you cool it down for 1 to 4 minutes. And then you repeat that cycle. That's a great way to improve cardiorespiratory fitness. Okay? And the last thing I'll say is all movement counts. So if you're looking at this going, oh my dear God, that is like way too much. I cannot do that. All movement counts. We're just not meant to be sitting. When you go up to the bathroom, nice time to get up 3 times before you go, right? When you are at the computer, set an alarm for every minute. Every minute, march for 1 minute. These are what we call exercise snacks. There's so many ways you can bring activity in your day-to-day life, and I will tell you, there's a lot of studies looking at these exercise snacks, these small frequent bursts. They have the same cardiovascular benefit, sometimes even more, than the people who do 30 minutes of consecutive activity and are sedentary for the rest of the day. Our bodies were meant to move, okay? Moving on to muscle quickly. Muscle is our longevity organ, and I can't stress this enough, right? Think about it. Think of people you have seen age. Think about your body as it has aged. When we lose our hormones, we lose muscle. Our ability to make it diminishes. Our max muscle is at 25 years. Starting at 40, we lose 8% per decade. And once you hit 70, that goes down by 15%. Once you get down to about 70% of the maximum amount of muscle you ever had, this is what they call the zone where death is significantly greater, and usually from injury. Muscle, it stabilizes our blood sugar, and we talked about insulin resistance is a big component of inflammation, right? Muscle supports our bones and makes our bones stronger. It also prevents falls. We lose balance as we age. If you have muscle, you're much more likely to be able to catch yourself and prevent that fall. So we want to preserve our muscle. How do we do it? Resistance training. So this can be through bands. This could be using your own body weight. This could be using handheld weights. There's so many ways to do resistance training. The point that I like to make is, unlike when we were young, especially for the ladies, we didn't want to get bulky, we wanted to tone, and we were taught use light weights and a lot of reps. That tones muscle, it doesn't build. Think about runners, right? Runners, they're toned, but they don't have big muscles. We want to build our muscle. So you want heavier. You want to be safe, right? Do this. If you're new to it, you're going to start light. But once you can easily do 10 reps of something, it's time to increase the resistance so that you're building that muscle. Do only 5 or 8 and repeat that set a couple times. That's going to build muscle. Adequate protein intake. I think this is a huge problem, particularly as our appetites decrease a little. We're not getting enough, and our taste buds change as we age. We taste salty and sugar much more easily. And so the empty carbs tend to be more of that diet. We want to change that, and we need to increase protein. So muscle protein synthesis takes 1 to 1.2 kilograms or grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. So for a 70 kilogram person, that's 154 pounds, you need 70 to 84 grams of protein a day. That's a lot. And 154 was the average weight of Americans. It no longer is. So I usually tell people 100 grams. You're aiming for 100 grams of protein a day. There are some supplements that can really help build muscle. I won't go a ton into those. If people have questions, they can ask me about those later. I think the biggest thing I would say is creatine. Creatine is, first of all, creatine does not cause kidney disease, but if you have kidney disease, you need to talk to your doctor before you start it. Mild is okay, but mild is not. If you don't have kidney disease, this is a wonderful and safe supplement for everyone. It helps preserve muscle. There's more and more evidence it's helping preserve brain function because creatine concentrates in our muscles and in our nerves. This is a busy slide, but I just want to show a little bit about what we do at Your Whole Health with body composition. I think it's so helpful to know not just what your weight is, but what your body composition is. So body composition will tell you weight, but it also looks at muscle mass and fat mass. And an ideal body type is when I can draw a line from the weight through muscle, through fat, straight up and down as an eye. So this is a person who is 54 years old. Their first in-body was at age 52, and they're just looking for some health optimization. They're actually coming, they're in that wonderful perimenopause or early postmenopausal time. They have a little tiny bit of what we call a C configuration, but it's small. I mean, this really looks like a great body type. I have nothing really to say. They were asking, and we know that as you're losing your hormones, and that's what's happening for this person at this time, you start to lose your muscles. So this person wanted to be proactive. They were never a weightlifter before, and they decided to start lifting weights. So a year later, this person, what's funny, this is also why I love body composition, because they've been working out, they've been lifting weights, and they're a little upset because even though they feel great, they gained a little bit of weight. First of all, they only gained 2 pounds. But I can show them, okay, yeah, you might have gained a few pounds, but that's because you put on almost 7 pounds of muscle. You lost fat. Your percent body fat is significantly different. And the other thing I like to point out is that our metabolic rate is directly related to muscle. So this will tell you what your basal metabolic rate is. And this person could have 1,292 calories beforehand. Now they can eat 1,382 calories. This is basal, this is resting. They can eat more than that because it doesn't take the activity into account. But this is so helpful to know this information. The other thing I look at along here is visceral fat. Visceral fat is that brown fat or the fat around the organs that increases our risk for diabetes and that kind of thing. So I just want to show a couple other examples to prove you can change. So this is a person in their early 60s, came to see me because they were frustrated ever since menopause. They just kept gaining weight and they had such trouble taking it off. They had a fairly good nutrition. There were some tweaks to be had. It was more a quantity issue, and they weren't really exercising. We did make the decision to use a weight loss medication just to help jumpstart things. So, but I never do that in a vacuum. We also did all the lifestyle stuff. This person made some tweaks in that nutrition, definitely looked at calories, but also started to do resistance training and exercising like every morning. So a year later, just look at the relationship between weight, muscle, and first of all, they lost 22 pounds. But see how different this C is compared to this? This person has lost a significant amount of percent body fat because they essentially didn't lose muscle. Losing 22 pounds and keep maintaining your muscle, that's amazing. This person's set themselves up for such a better health span down the line. What I really love, their visceral fat was 21, now it's 17. So that systemic inflammation that's driving all those accelerated aging way down. This is a person in their 60s. Lest anyone want to say, well, no, I'm too old. This person's 80. Okay? So there's no excuses here. So this person also came to see me, had an excellent diet, really was more quantity. They were exercising. They actually have decent muscle, but they do have a C. Not doing as much resistance training. Again, that personalized approach. We talk about specifically what her nutritional requirements are and exercise recommendations. Visceral, so first of all, 25 pounds, no medication, by the way. Lost 25 pounds, but this person is now, they had a C, this is essentially an I. This is really, at 80, this is amazing. They lost fat and weight without really, they lost 2 pounds of muscle, not even 1.5 pounds. And it's all about the ratios, right? It's the ratio of muscle to your full body weight. And their visceral fat, 16 down to 10 at 80 years old. So, and feeling good and not miserable, can be done. All right, last thing I want to talk about is a sense of purpose when it comes to longevity. So your sense of purpose is really your reason for living. What gives you fulfillment in life? Why do you get up in the morning? And when we look at what sort of people with sort of the highest sense of purpose, it's when we have goals that are not just, I can't wait to go on vacation, right? Something that really fulfills you. Volunteering is a great one, okay? Family is a great one. Wanting to move forward in your job. It doesn't always have to be altruistic. Those are great senses of purpose. 2022 study, this looked at over 12,000 people aged 50 and over. And they found that older adults with the highest sense of purpose had a 46% lower risk of mortality over this 4-year study. So this is just as important as anything else. And I do find that my folks that have retired, whose kids are grown and off and they aren't working anymore, sometimes this is an area where we're looking for something to fill that void. And go find it. There's so many things. I'm going to give a shout out to the auxiliary right now. What a great way to find a sense of purpose. This is a group that puts on presentations for the community like this. They fundraise for our medical system. They've done hospice in the past, the MICU. Let me tell you, as a doctor, I love when the MICU came. That made me very happy out in Milford. Because these are, they're used to the very, very acute issues, and they can administer meds, they intubate people, they're amazing. And the thing I like about these kinds of organizations, you meet another need, which is community. So community, having people that you're connected with, also a very important part of our health, right? We actually saw that in the pandemic. There were so many studies to show that loneliness is the new smoking in terms of burden of disease and mortality. So that is it. My encouragement to you is to find joy in the journey of health. Living healthy is not meant to be a punishment. Sometimes I feel like Dr. Killjoy, because I'm like, okay, let's not, have a lot of sugar and let's exercise. But these can be great things. This is my last Hippocrates quote. Before you heal someone, ask him if he's willing to give up the things that make him sick. Okay? So sometimes part of the motivation is just realizing how you want to feel. Is, having those McDonald's French fries often really worth what you're giving up for it? Okay? As you make changes in your life to improve your health, first of all, I say make goals that are not just achievable, but they're also realistic. And you have to be kind to yourself because change is hard. Be intuitive as you're making these changes. How do I feel? Is my energy better? Is my sleep better? I love the wearables because they are very obvious for, if I have wine, what happens to my sleep? But find the joy. See how, find community members that want to do a healthy meal, like rotating night. There's so many ways to make this fun. And that is it. So I thank you for your time.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling rather guilty about what I've been doing.
Oh,